My name is Samantha Logan. I'm 19 years old, and I go here to LCCC. Some of you may have seen me around in the hallways and things like that. I actually started my transition in these hallways. And a lot of people, as I've seen, have been slightly on the confused side regarding my transition. So I figured I'd stand here and hope that you guys ask questions. Hopefully I can educate you guys on what I've been going through. So this is a very, very wide topic, and this is something I could talk with you guys for days on. And it may not take that time for me to explain everything. You may have to get to know me. But what I did do is I boiled it down into 3 points. What I was doing before my transition and how I felt being termed as gender dysphoria. What I have done during my transition thus far and where I stand. And where I intend to go with my transition. Starting off, I want to start off with the term gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria is typically explained as the incongruence between one's mental idea of gender and one's born identity, causing a conflict resulting in unhappiness, mental distress, and sometimes pain. I like to describe it as a scale from 1 to 10, where you have over here 1, a male who's completely happy in his male role. He enjoys sports, he likes to do things society terms as a male trait, and he hasn't really thought about his gender very much. It doesn't bother him. And then over here you have the 10. The 10 is typically referred to as the girl trapped in a boy's body. This is a very, very drastic 10. This is where if this person was not able to transition and become the gender they want, they would rather have death. I typically refer to the beginning of my transition as a 3. Now, this does not mean that I felt my dysphoria any less. It just means that my dysphoria demonstrated itself in a very confusing manner. It wasn't straight up, I'm a girl trapped in a guy's body. What I felt was an inherent wrongness. As a child, I didn't really identify with genders. In maybe 4th or 5th grade, it was explained to me, this is what a boy is, this is what a girl is, these are the difference, and here's you. But it never really clicked in my head in any way, shape, or form. It was more along the lines of, there's a boy and there's a girl, and I'm me. I'm different. I am neither of these people. But that did unfortunately change. When I was going through puberty in 7th and 8th grade, when I noticed all these boys were growing up this way and acting this way, I didn't really identify with it. And I saw all these girls, and I was kind of confused. Because when I saw a girl going through puberty, that wrongness just came up. Like, you know when you were a kid or something and you stole a piece of gum, but you got caught, so the convenience store manager brings you back and calls your parents and all this stuff. It's like, oh God. And you're sitting in that chair waiting for your punishment, and you know you felt wrong, and you did something, and you felt guilty about it. I felt that 24/7. I had 2 girlfriends throughout my high school years, before my transition. This is important because the way that I felt during those 2 relationships, I thought was love. I thought I loved these girls. But what I had mistaken was envy. I envied these girls. I wanted to be these girls. And it hurt me. That wrongness stayed there. Simultaneously, starting in 9th grade in my high school years, I began to cross-dress. I cross-dressed in private. I didn't want anyone to know in any way, shape, or form. And I was really good at hiding it. I went 4 years before I got caught. When I got caught was senior year, and it had grown. That wrongness was typically reduced to nothing. minimal when I cross-dressed. In 9th grade, it was maybe cross-dressed for 10 minutes, and then I'm done. I thought it was a sexual quirk at first, but it wasn't. Because as I continued, by the time I hit junior year, in fact, I ended up cross-dressing all day, all I could, without being caught. I once foregoed going with friends to a movie just to cross-dress because I felt I needed it. When I got caught, it was probably the best thing to ever happen to me. Yeah, it was really awkward because my dad walks in and I'm sitting here dressed and I'm like, crap, well, here I am. Awkward. But it was probably the best thing to happen to me because what it did was it propelled me away from that fear of transitioning and researching it and thinking about it and being where I am now. Now, preparing for transition, going through therapy, getting hormones, and thinking about surgeries is what I'm doing. When I prepared for transition, it was a very difficult and arduous task. It was something to think about almost constantly. I spent 3 months just thinking about whether this was what I wanted. I spent another 3 not only thinking about whether this was what I wanted, but researching it intensely. 15 pages of evidence in those first 3 months, and 50 in the second 3. When I decided to go through with it, I had to know what officials wanted. Now they have a process where you have to go through 3 months of therapy in order to make sure this is what you want before you get a letter that you take to your physician and give it to them saying that you want hormones, gender-altering hormones. Now, when I was going through therapy, all we talked about was everything under the sun. Everything. We talked about my family. We actually wrote out a histogram of genetics because it was required. We talked about relationships. We talked about how my day at the time was. We had an entire session on just how my day at school was. And then 3 months later, I get this letter, and it's 6 pages. My therapist was awesome. Got 6 pages, took it to a doctor, said, I want hormones. Guy goes, okay, what do you want? When you say, what do you want as a doctor to one of your customers, to one of your clients, it gets kind of awkward for the client. But the truth is, the reality is, many doctors at this point in time don't understand cross-gender hormones. So getting hormones is a constant research. You have to research all the time. You have to know what's going on. You have to know your own doses. You have to produce your own regimen. And that's kind of difficult. But to me, it's worth going through. Now, there are different portions of a transition other than the physical. It's never just physical. There's more than the physical portion. There's more than getting hormones to get a female body. There's more than the surgeries. There's also mental aspects, and I believe this is the most important portion of transition. And what I mean is voice and mannerisms. When you see a girl who's standing like this, you go, okay, kind of awkward. When you see a man who's going, bam, it's kind of awkward. It's because we assign genders and roles to every action. And I'm not going to say that a guy standing like this is not allowed. I'm just saying that that is something you should remove in order to pass. Passing for transsexuals is very important. Living as a female in our role requires that we are accepted as a female in our role. Voice and mannerisms is obviously important, and it's a lot of work. This voice right here is about 7 months worth of practice, and it's still not perfect, and it's not where I want it to be. But it's a good advantage versus walking up to someone like a teller in a place and going, so I would like, I'd like that. right there. And then they look at you and they're like, clocked? Clocking basically means that someone suddenly knows. They know you're not female, and they act weird because of it. And you never like getting clocked. So voice is important. Mannerisms, being the way people stand, is also a very difficult thing to learn, because you have to learn that when you're sitting, you can't keep your legs spread in a dress or a skirt. And it's hard to beat that habit, because I grew up with it. I personally grew up with it until I was 18 when I started my transition. It's a very long and arduous journey. It really is, mentally and physically. And I'm really happy that I did it. And I am planning on doing surgeries, but I'm not promising myself I will. Where I plan to go is very uncertain, and I have yet to think about it in depth and research it, because I know that it is expensive. Transition is incredibly expensive. Having an SRS surgery can be robbing you in the bank. So it's ridiculously difficult to save up for. So do I want the SRS? Yes, I definitely want the SRS. Am I planning on the SRS? We'll talk about that in about 20 years.